Well, greetings everybody, and welcome to the Inworld review, where, believe it or not, it is the 12th of November already. It's a bit chilly over here, that's why I'm giving the month a bit of a special sound. Right, I'm sure we'll get used to it. Okay. Now, we weren't here last week. Our apologies for that. We didn't have anything to bring you, to be honest. So maybe it's a case of no apology needed. But if you were hanging on waiting for us, we hate to disappoint. But we are back here this week, of course. I'm joined by my regular partner on the seat here, who also handling our multi-camera systems, James Atler. Welcome, James.
Oh, thank you, Mel. It's great to be here.
And we're also welcoming back a very familiar face on this show. It's Kevin Feenan, sometimes known as Felon Corrimal, from Rockcliffe University, and of course convener of the Virtual World's Best Practices in Education conference. So welcome, Kevin.
Hey, thank you very much.
Now, we probably have a little bit to discuss. So, you, of course, have just finished the real life conference that I can't pronounce. And you have announcements for the next VWBPE. And, of course, who knows what's going on at Rockcliffe, too. What I'm going to do is, for the benefit of our audience, just before we start chatting, I'm going to activate our picture show, as it were, just do a bit of housekeeping. First off, I'm just loading a picture promo for the Open Simulator Community Conference by way of a reminder. You can still register and go to this. Obviously, the agenda is now finalized and you can't submit to it anymore, but it's coming up on the 9th and 10th of December, which is, now we're in November, I said it, that is barely a month away. In fact, it probably is exactly 4 weekends away. So that promises to be a great event. I'll be hosting a couple of panels there, one on the viewers and one I'm really looking forward to on the Hypergrid as the killer app of OpenSim, so to speak. But a massive other stuff happening on there. Some of it, some of them educational presentations too, which Kevin, my guest here, will be doing a presentation there too. So, but it's a good old mix of everything from the tech side of it to the best uses side to it to the past, present, future, you name it. A good conference to come to if you possibly can attend. And it will be broadcast on Avacon's YouTube channel for the most part, if you guys attend virtually, but want to tune in on the web. And back on the reminder section, the following weekend, and this still hasn't got the dates on it, darn it, the following weekend, which I recall is 16th, 17th of December, we also have the first Hypergrid International Expo, which has its own grid, which is hie.ddnss.org. And the port number is 8006. It's not the usual 8002. And it's already open if you want a Hypergrid over there and watch it while it's being built. But that will be the address, of course, for the conference itself. And you can also see more about it on the web by going to hie.ddnss.org. on the web without the colon and all that stuff. So this conference will basically be split into 4 half days. And this year's the first year. It's going to have a European focus, basically. There'll be half a day in French, half a day in Spanish, half a day in German, and half a day in Italian. And if you want to help us with that, or even still have proposals for that, please get in touch with me or also Zaremba. I'm sure you know one of us, if not both. And an appeal here is we are actively looking for more translators. When we conceived the idea of the 4 main languages, plus of course English from a translation point of view, I wasn't really thinking that the actual combinations add up to 25, was 5 times 5 languages. And so I suddenly realized that is a real headache of people for translating. So if anybody is interested in translating between any one of those languages, German, Italian, French, Spanish, English, then do please get in touch. We could use your services if you would like to volunteer. Right, so that's the housekeeping done, and now we have a new slide, and we'll be seeing more of this over the coming months. This new slide is advertising VR revolutions, or V revolutions, depending on how we call it, which will be happening in March next year. And as I said, this is Virtual's best practices in education for 2018. So, Felon, I guess we'll start with the forthcoming conference. I know you've got the call for proposals out, etc. So tell us where we're at the moment.
Well, with regards to the conference, well, like I said, the call for proposals is out. The sponsorship stuff is out, so we're raring to go there. We're just sort of lining up our keynotes. Hopefully we'll be able to announce those in a little bit. We already have a couple that I know of that are sort of in the works, but if I say anything, then there's a Texan out there that's going to cut off various body parts that I would like to keep.
Yes, exactly. They're going to run away if you mention them. So
yes.
Keep them under wraps.
so I gotta keep a couple of secrets, but no, it's shaping up to be really good for this year. We've done a bit of a rework on the call for proposals. Early on, as part of the conference was very inclusive of lots of different communities. So the fashion community, the music community, the nonprofit community, the education community. And as we started to move along and we started to introduce a little bit more peer-reviewed options for papers, somehow there got this impression out there that the conference was strictly for educators. And so, we've been trying to encourage people to submit different proposals on things like music and what have you, because education is one of those things that is heavily reliant on the creative works of tons and tons of other people. I mean, in order to do anything inside a virtual world, you need music, you need fashion, you need scripters, you need tools, you need, and for whatever reason, and we think part of it was the way we had sort of structured the call for proposals. So we've gone back, we've taken a look at it, we've completely revamped the format to make it hopefully be a lot more clear that we're really trying to encourage these communities back to the table. I mean, they were never not invited in the first place, but again, it's just one of those things that sometimes the way that you present things, it gives a perception to the community that's out there, and so we're trying to bring that back a little bit, right?
I kind of like the way that poster looks. Actually, it's a lot brighter than previous ones. But, VR, actually, you've always done this to a certain extent, but V Revolutions, as it were, is big, so is the different graphic. And the fact is it is VWBPA, it's down in the corner. So it's not like the word education is jumping out at people and giving them the impression that it's a generic conference about the educating community, because education is everything, isn't it? It's lifelong learning, and so everything there is requires educating in for the human being, if you see what I mean.
It's a ton of these particular types of things, because if you look at if you look at gaming, if you look at music, again, I'm going to come back to fashion. I mean, people pass on their experience from one person to another in all kinds of different formats. And one of the biggest things that people love to do is they love to talk about the things that they know about, right? I mean, the easiest way to gain somebody interest in a conversation is to ask them about themselves, right, and the things that they're doing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things that the fashion designers are doing, and the music people are doing, and the scripters are doing, and the tool developers are doing, I mean, those are the stories that we sort of need to hear from. When you're building a virtual environment, when you're building an experience, when you're building a feast for the senses, so to speak, you can't do it by just simply bringing one piece of the puzzle to the table. Because you need the people that develop the 3D objects, you need the graphic artists, you need the not only do you need to create the illusion of a world, right? The illusion of an experience, but you have to bring that experience to life. And one of the things that we've been finding more and more as we've been going through is that, and it was something that I put out there as part of a rebuttal to an article that was in Hypergrid Business. And I apologize, I've forgotten the lady's name. I've had like 4 or 5 conversations with her, but there was one lady that put out a Hypergrid article that sort of said, oh, educators are leaving the Second Life in the virtual environments. And unfortunately, that wasn't the gist of the conversations that I was having with her. But unfortunately, she pulled a couple of comments out of like a 4 or 5 email chain, and that was the one that got in. Yeah. And I understand where she was going with the article, and I completely understand what it was that she was trying to do. The unfortunate part was that she left a wrong impression in terms of how education is using these particular environments. And it's not so much that people are leaving. It's more a matter of there's a competition in technology for people's attention. And right now, although we've had some improvement and some new features and some bling and some other things, right? We've had some improvement with inside Second Life and Open Simulator, the true tools that we really need to really take this to the next level. None of those tools are currently in development, as far as I know, and they're just simply not available. Right. So we're sort of, we can work with what we've got, but in the meantime, you have all these other things that are out there that are vying for people's attention. So you've got all these mobile applications. You've got what Facebook is doing. You've got what Google is doing. You've got what Disney is doing, for Pete's sake. I mean, there are just so many, and then you've got the increases in the way in which we work with data, big data, cloud computing, the interconnection of and the ability to work with complex data sets has been increased. Our capability of dealing with these particular types of data sets has been increasing exponentially over the last 5 years. Yeah. So, and it's going to continue for quite a while. So when you, and my apologies, I'm going to throw another and in here, and then you include all these other little applications that are coming along for the web and for mobile and what have you, that are making it easier to collaborate on different things. I mean, there was one that I was looking at earlier today that was a graphing program where students could go in and they can share in real time, working with graphs and charts and seeing how, like by putting in different formulas, how it changes the graph, how you can work with your data to manipulate statistical numbers and what have you. I admit I'm a geek, right? I thought that was cool, but it was more from the standpoint that it was collaborative. Yeah. And and the fact that it would allow you to manipulate graphs in using like if you try to do something in Excel and you ask Excel to do a trend line on a graph, right? Excel has certain parameters and it doesn't exceed those parameters. Well, you can take that information, bring it into this particular tool, and then you can play with the formulas in order to tweak the graph to get a better fit in terms of your trend line. Right. That's powerful. That's cool, right? Excel doesn't do that for you. This little program does, and it does it in a collaborative fashion. These are the types of stories that we need to, in part, bring to the conference. Not just what are we doing in virtual worlds, but how are we integrating that the virtual experience and the augmented reality experience with everything else that's going on around us, and how it can allow us to improve the way in which we exchange and express ideas. And that's not limited to teachers. That extends to the musician who has a friend that wants to learn how to play guitar or to learn chords. It extends to the fashion designer that wants to show elements of design. The way in which how you make simple changes to a design, or the way in which you stitch a fabric to get different results, right, as you're dressing people up, so to speak. And the more and more that we have the ability that we can bring these diverse perspectives together in order to create an experience, something that is because eventually what we sort of need to get to is an opportunity where the average person, and we're not anywhere close to this just yet, but we're taking small steps there, right? But where the average person can go into a virtual world, and almost similar to the holodeck on Star Trek, and they can basically say, computer, I need a 17th century Roman cathedral church, right? And you have all the right furniture, you have all the right architecture. I mean, everything that you need in order to then conduct what it is that you want to do, what the learning experience is trying to be with inside that environment. You really want to sort of, eventually, I think what we want to get to is we want to get to the point where the virtual environment becomes a secondary thing. It's something where you don't have to spend hours or days or months or weeks, right? Well, weeks or months, either way, trying to build the environment simply so then you can do a 1-2 hour learning session with your friends or your students or whoever else.
This is the endless problem, isn't it? Because there are some great builders in both here, but are still over in Second Life and out in the hypergrid, but they, it sort of takes time. It sounds like what you're describing, and I think this is way down the line, but could be a sort of thing. Let's say you've got a space like, there are whole questions about the big companies doing this, but, let's say you've got an advanced version of Facebook Spaces, for example, and you've got an advanced version of something like Google's Warehouse or SketchUp, where you can immediately go to an empty virtual space and call up a template saying, I want a cathedral, I want 17th century, I want such and such a size, can accommodate so many visitors. And a bit like you load a template into your PowerPoint. Now, actually, as a creator, I avoid those things like the plague, but I do realize that people like to pull up templates. They can't afford to hire graphic designers to do certain things, so if a piece of software gives them a template, they can do it. And we already know with like Media on a Prim and with a few other things that we can have interactive screens in even something like here, because you simply get all the people present to click on the screen that gives an individual instance for them to collaborate with other people in the room with an interactive web on the prim. And we also have data visualization tools that I think are great, because somebody can say grab the data from two kind of databases, like as if they were making a PowerPoint type thing. And instead of having two axes on the bar chart, in 3D you've got three. And effectively that means that whereas you've got four combinations of information, you extend that to 9 by having 3 by 3 in the technical math sense. So people actually look at the equivalent of a bar chart in virtuality, and they see 3 different axes, and they get a much better sense of what the information is conveying than they ever would when they only see two viewpoints of the same data. So that's already happening in some ways, but I think what you're getting at is a thing that I get passionate about, which is interoperability. I mean, we have travel and communication interoperability on the hypergrid, which is unique to OpenSim, for example. Well, you have it in Second Life and things, but only within that platform. But what is missing is like this sort of plug-in idea where, you can call up and bring things in. And I'm not talking about uploading from your hard disk or, building stuff and putting it in your inventory and collecting it, but where you could literally look something up and say, can I have that cathedral in here now? And have an immediate kind of translation import system, just as you might, other facilities too. Something that I see happening, that I don't know how much you know about it, but it might interest you. I'm actually sort of covering this at the conference a bit. We have Selby Evans, thinker of Melville, is going on promoting his web worlds, which are basically a customized version of a system out of Germany called Cyber Lounge, which we'll be talking about at the conference. And this, just without going into it in detail, I can, for example, take a whole region in OpenSim and export the OAR file. And as you all know, once you've got that exported and it's your own creation, you can create once and then deploy everywhere. And you can now actually deploy that OAR file onto the web using a web viewer. The only difference, of course, is that what you put on the web is not an instance of the world you've taken it from. It's simply a sort of copy in another place that looks the same. But I was considering that at some point in the future, let's say I built this studio here and exported it, I might have scripts and facilities within the studio that are within the exported build, and would actually contain codes that allowed for interoperability when it was deployed elsewhere. So a copy of the studio on the web is not going to allow people to see me broadcasting like video does, or by being in the audience. But it might be that the web version has a chat link to the OpenSim version, because you'll design a system that can plug in and connect those two facilities together, even though the platforms themselves are actually different. And we're also seeing this in Science Space, of course, which to me is a bit like this new Linden Lab Sansar thing, but rather more advanced, where they particularly are trying to attract and successfully attracting educators by the look of it. But again, they have a platform. It's not so much a walled garden, but it's built with Unity. But then again, lots of other worlds are. And, if we could start developing tools, maybe in Unity or something, but are standalone tools that can plug into the different worlds with a common authoring base, then there may be a lot of things we could do there. I want it to happen on the hypergroup, but I don't know. But it seems to me that you're visualizing a step down the line, where all these resources would be available for educators and others, without the phenomenal investment. I'm not talking money here, but investment in time and energy that is often required for just one instance, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of interesting things that you raised. So let me come back to the first thing. So the idea of being able to, this idea where easily be able to import and export OR files, or I think there's a smaller version like an AR. Either way, whatever. The other thing,
AIR is an inventory file. OAR is a region. Yeah.
So the ability to import and export those particular things on demand is, I think, going to be crucial to the future of whatever happens with inside virtual worlds. It's interoperability, I think, is going to come. I think that's just a given. The problem that we've got right now is portability. That's problem number one, because the way in which several of the past lawsuits have sort of gone, and the way in which everybody's been structuring their open simulator regions, it's still very much a question of, if I go to, so as an example, if I go to the Kitely market and I decide that I need a script that's going to run a little NPC character around the room here.
Yeah.
Right. And I can put in my parameters. I can say, okay, I want it to do such and such. I want it to say certain commands when I want it to interact with somebody. Right. And and it might be a really cool thing and what have you. However, that because of the permissions normally attached to scripts like that, I can, I've only got so much that I can actually take out of a virtual environment and make it portable to somewhere else. And
well, you've got two elements there, haven't you? You've got one, Kitely, for example, you'll pay a different price if you want perms than if you simply want a copy for your own use.
Yeah.
And transfer between grids. But also you've got to remember if it's a matter of the scripts, it's not just a matter of the perms, it's the language the scripts are written in. For example, most scripts that operate in Open Simulator here and on the hypergrid, they could be written in OSSL, I think it is, or even Linden script language, or various other languages, and they operate here. But if I take an object from here, say a mesh chair with animation scripts in it, I can export that to Unity to a Sciencebase or put it on a web world. But what at the moment, what will go through is a perfect copy of the chair, but the animations won't go through because the script is meaningless on the other platform.
Yeah.
So whereas if I actually write it in, say, JavaScript, and the object calls a web backend instead of an in-world backend, then hopefully one can create something where the object behaves the same in different platforms because it's using internet, standard like JavaScript protocols or something that will, means it will be multifunctional in multi places. And that's what I like, the idea that we can create facilities that will not just look like the same chair in multiple places, but do the same thing.
Well, this is I think this is one of the core, the idea of portability has to be a core aspect, because one of the things that really made Second Life successful was the ability to create derivative works based on things that other people did.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden money got mixed up with it, right? And as soon as you mix money in with anything, people start to get really touchy in terms of, I own that and you can only do so much with it, and I never intended that you could export this or use it for multiple purposes. And to a certain extent, the whole copyright system is sort of broken with regards to that extent.
Oh yeah, perspective. We have so many debates on this. Sometimes it just befuddles me because I just look at the web as the obvious metaphor, and at the moment, I don't want to see virtual worlds go the same way. Though as long as this consumer society continues, it might well in the end. But you've got back when the web started, it was a sharing community. And artists will put up low resolution pictures and info about the work, and they didn't give a damn if anybody copied it because it was low resolution and it had no implicit value. And if anything, it was good PR. But now you'll find a copyright notice and a DigiSign something on a ridiculously low-res picture that you really don't want to copy because you can't do anything with it. It's reached the point of extremes. The web was never meant to be a platform for commerce. Commerce took it over. And of course, the Open Simulator Core people will tell you, OpenSim is not for commercial use. But of course it is because of its open source license. And it's inevitable that, they've got the platform that's going to be used for commerce, whether they want it or not, even if they try and break it for commerce.
Yeah. And the definition of what is commerce and what isn't commerce is also one of those things that even the Creative Commons people have been fighting with this one for years in terms of trying to update the Creative Commons license to. So here's one of the challenges. So if you collect a whole pile of material, right, and you basically say we want to collect the following material under a Creative Commons license, we want to make it free, we want to make it open source, but because the infrastructure that it needs to reside on costs money, right? Yeah, we're going to have sponsors. We're going to put little ads next to it and what have you. It's not designed to make a profit. It's designed to cover the cost of the infrastructure in order to make that material available. So even if you are a nonprofit, even if you're a 501c, if you're a registered charity in Canada, according to the Creative Commons license, as soon as you accept a single dollar of income in relationship to the material that you are presenting, it is no longer a nonprofit purpose. And that is moronic.
That is a load of nonsense, right? There are overheads and everything. You have a non-profit, real world, right? They have to have a little office somewhere. They have to rent it. They have to pay for it unless they've got a patron who's giving them a space somewhere. They then go and buy furniture for it, and they put the furniture in it. Now, can you imagine going to visit there and, there's a guy visiting behind the desk and tells you to take a seat? Of course you can take a seat. The seat is something you bought separately from the venue. The two are not connected in any way. Well, and when people argue otherwise, it's daft to me.
Well, and the purists, the lawyers amongst the people that are helping the nonprofit commons, not the nonprofit commons, the Creative Commons group, write the various updates to the licenses. Right? I mean, this is one of the core challenges that they've been battling back and forth on, and nobody can seem to agree on. Is the fact that an individual, a community group, a nonprofit association, a registered charity, it doesn't matter, right? If the intent of what it is that you're trying to do is for nonprofit purposes, and all you're trying to do is recoup the cost of your operating expenses, right? Yeah. That should be considered a non-profit purpose, right? But they can't, and I think most people would agree with that, but nobody from a legal perspective, because of the way the precedent is inside the law, both in Canada, the US, over in Europe, what have you, it makes it difficult in order to make that argument. And somebody eventually is going to get their nose out of joint to basically say, no, you received income, therefore I'm entitled to a royalty to this particular work.
But I'm afraid income is not profit. Profit is if you do something and it involves, expenditure and income, right? It is non-profit until it shows a profit, a surplus.
Well, that's the flip side of the coin, because the other side, the other side of the argument on this particular one is that, any company can go out there and basically say, I'm nonprofit because I never made money. You look at things like, any movies coming out of Star Wars. Any movie coming out of Sony or Disney or what have you. Yeah. I mean, they rake in billions, and they still turn around. Yeah, and people are making money left, right, and center in terms of, the actors are being paid 30, 40, 50, 70 million dollars a picture, and Disney's turning around and saying, oh, well, the film wasn't a success because we didn't make, quote unquote, make any money from it.
Yeah, no corporate profit. Yeah.
Yeah. So the flip side of the coin is that as soon as you open up, and I think this is part of where the law has been going, as soon as you open up that other side of the argument to say, yes, you can claim reasonable expenses and still be considered as nonprofit or non-commercial, right? Sorry, not nonprofit. Non-commercial is actually the term that they're arguing over. Yeah. Then you have this thing in terms of, okay, well, you're inevitably going to get those people that go out there and they're going to deliberately try to skew how it is that they're presenting information to make it look as if they are non-commercial, when in fact they are a commercial entity in terms of what it is that they're doing. So this is the difficulty that they're going back and forth with. But notwithstanding that, let me come back to this idea that we were talking about a little bit earlier, where you're talking about interoperability. I think there's something a little bit more, so to me, portability is one of the core things. I think interoperability is going to come eventually. We're going to start to see more and more of that as we go along. Portability has been something that has not been considered as much as I think it should. I think portability is one of those major stumbling blocks that we're facing, and that until we have some way that we can make things more portable than they are right now, I think we're going to continue to stumble with some of this stuff, and I'm hoping the various different groups that are working on this are actually going to see reason at some point and make things a little bit better. I think
when you talk about portability, if I get it right, I take it you're referring to platform portability. In other words, having the virtual space available in a portable form on, say, a tablet or a phone.
Let's strip it back even further than that. All I'm talking about is taking a region and being able to take it from one grid to another. I'm not even talking Unity or anything else, because here's the challenge. I mean, if everything that you do inside a virtual space is based upon collaborative work, it's based on derivative works that people put together, it's based on collaboration. Right? Yeah. You could have 10, 20, 15, 10, 15, 20 different people working on a single region build, which means the owners and the permissions to every single object are going to be different.
Right? Yes. I mean, you can get around that, but yes.
Well, you can, but it takes effort. It takes effort. It's not the path of least resistance, and this is the third concept that I think needs to be brought into this. Is this idea of the path of least resistance. So a lot of grids make it difficult to basically say, yeah, no problem. You can export whatever you have on a region so long as you're the owner to all the objects. Well, it's right. Like, no, but I'm not. There's 10, 15 people that contributed to this build. I still need the build to be portable, right? You have a teacher go into a region and he or she has got anywhere between 20 and 35 students that are working on a particular build. Now, all of a sudden, they want to port it someplace else, right? Unless they've got a private grid where they are controlling everything that's going on in the back end, and they can force the permissions to a single user, right? I mean, you need like ultimate god powers for that, right? But I mean, it's possible, right? So,
I'll give you an example, because I think I'm preempting you a bit here, but I think the ultimate solution is something I've done here. We're actually broadcasting from a grid. It's a single region, but it's the size of 25. Standard regions is something called the bar file, but it's all running on my own computer. So I've got total god powers, and if it goes down, I can reboot it at a moment's second's notice. I can export OER. cars, I can import them, I can export, you know, I've got every aspect of possibility under control. I can make a copy of the entire region, deploy it with difficulty on the web, but potentially, and I've been having people on this show interviewing for quite a while, and my feeling even before I set up this grid for myself, because it has no residence, it's just me, I can go in and out of it and pull people in and out, but it's just me. I have, it's like it's my home, just as the home is where I've got the computer is on, and I can move out and move in. And, I reckon, a lot of organizations use this method too now, because let's face it, if you only need a few people in and out and it's a small affair, you're not running a public grid that's got to, scale to lots of avatars and lots of weight. It is one of those options where you actually have that control. And in talking to people on this show, we've gone to the theme of like, moving from the Second Life initiated concept of building in a world, right? And being trapped where even your own content is to a certain extent trapped in the corporate environment of that world. The idea is you deploy, you create offline, or you can create in your own space. You create once and then you deploy everywhere. The snags all come in with, say, here we got a floor on the studio. But hang on a sec, was that texture on the floor mine? Or is it something that was open source that I put on it? Well, the answer is something open source that I put on it. But, and there's a lot of, I see rather petty there, the amount of fuss made out of textures, for example, is something that drives me up the wall, because anybody can pick up a photo, camera, take their own texture and, meld the edges so it's a seamless tile and use their own. There's no major art to half these textures, and most of the time the person that claims it's theirs in their virtual product actually nicked it from somewhere else in real life anyway. Yeah. So and so much, it's like these, what do I call them, patent trolls and stuff. They're grabbing at this thing at a certain point in a chain, and sort of, saying I own this point in the chain, but, there's probably a whole load of things back in the chain that they don't own. And in fact, they may, the point they grabbed onto that they claim ownership of, they may have done really nothing with. They may just be sitting on it so they can claim it at that point. And, there is a limit to what is, isn't, a lot of it's down to value, there are some things that, if somebody comes here and copies this chair, and I have made all, actually this chair was made by my partner Tara, the ones we're sitting on, right? So effectively, the whole shape, the parts of it that are put together, the textures on it, all belongs to her. Although the animation that I put on them does not, put into it does not. But, you could say, but by taking a copy of that, which one can, then, you're infringing, you haven't gone stumbling all over the world trying to find the person that made it in the first place to get the rights. Yeah. It's the fact that, to me, if I go on the hypergrid and pick up stuff to use here, I'm a designer, so I'm never going to replicate somebody else's stuff. I will use components and make my own things out of them. And I will never pick up something I can't, I will be... the moment I right click, and if it says take copy, I would take a copy. It's quite easy to make sure you can't take a copy if they don't want me to. So, I assume there's, I assume, and I think I'm right in doing so, whatever any fancy lawyer says, I think the moment I see take copy and take a copy, I'm not breaking any law, intellectual or otherwise. If I actually use devious means to take a copy of something I'm not allowed to copy, that would be another matter. But, I have no truck with somebody who says, hey, you took a copy of my thing. And I said, yes, it said take copy, Well, and you understand, it's like rational common sense, like we use in the real world.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, this is one of the things that started happening with inside, I guess the open simulator community was, as soon as people were allowed to take things between grids, all of a sudden, artists started coming forward, right, and designers and other people basically saying, hey, wait a second, there are different markets for each of these particular regions. And just because I said that, yeah, you could take a copy in this grid didn't mean that I meant that you could take a copy in the other grid, because I've got a store over there that's selling specifically to those people.
Well, they can, to be honest, no, they can protect against that. I mean, I will frequently be on the hypergrid on another grid, and I will go to take copy because it says take copy. And then it will actually tell me, give me a little pop-up saying, you are not allowed to take a copy because you're not a resident of this grid. So there's code in place to accommodate that. But it's just the way people think about these things. And especially for educators, nonprofits, where you don't have a high budget. You want to be able to get stuff affordable or free if possible, you know. If you came over to Britain to visit me, say you flew over, right? I took you down to Bond Street or somewhere, and we found you, you know, maybe it's just a nice suit, or maybe it's a really expensive, slick suit, right? You know, the rationale of telling you've got to get out of it when you get on the plane and give it up halfway across the Atlantic because it was designed in the UK. Come off it. You know, the world does not work like that. And to take silly little things, well, they have an import, obviously, but to consider things that are totally virtual, to have even greater value than we do in the real world, you know, to employ even greater restrictions on virtual things, to me is pardon my language, ass backward. You know, everything I do virtually, it's like an electronic world I'm in. It's an extension of the real world, and the laws and the logic, the common sense of the real world should be really what governs. You know, it's inconceivable to me that people seem to invent all these new nooks and crannies in patents and laws and things, which would not really make sense when you were dealing with real world things. They only make sense when you're talking about abstracts.
Well, and unfortunately, the way the law is structured is common sense is quite often secondary to death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah,
because when the law takes a look at something, it looks at one very small component in isolation from everything else. And sometimes that's the exact wrong thing to be doing. Sometimes the thing to be doing is to be looking at the situation, including all of its secondary and tertiary impacts on what it actually means when we do something, right? But you know, this is, you know, lawyers make money, you know, going in, arguing nuanced points about something. And, you know, then as a result of that, they then cascade that into 1,000 other things. And, you know, so you know, the whole thing in terms of,
coming back to your specific problem, but related, you know, couldn't there be a kind of sort of co-op type structure where, say, nonprofits had a collective pool of resources that they could share and use freely, where obviously at the point where the contributions are made to the pool, somebody would have to ensure that all the rights are available at that point. But once the objects or services are in the pool, then say educators or nonprofits could freely dip into that pool, safe in the knowledge that they're not going to inherit any liabilities. Well, it's an idea that maybe it will pay for organizations like that to have some kind of protection with a pool of verified, copyright-free material.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're mentioning that, because that's actually part of the direction that we're taking the Rockcliffe Library in over the next year. Because here's the thing: as part of Rockcliffe, we've obviously switched over to a membership model, right? And we're trying to encourage people to come on board and you know, through being able to collaborate on different projects and what have you. But I mean, as part of this, I guess one of the things that I'm looking at is that Second Life over the last several years has not, until recently, right? Because I just recently heard that Ebby's going to be sinking a lot more money into the Second Life platform.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. That's a huge thing, because for years they have not been doing that. They have let their competitive advantage on that platform slip. It is still an awesome platform from the standpoint of prototyping and the ability in order to work collaboratively with various different groups. You really do not get that, outside of Open Simulator, you do not get that opportunity too many other places. And Second Life is still sort of the gold standard with regards to what everybody else needs to catch up on. But in the meantime, they've still lost 6 to 8 years of competitive advantage by not putting the investment into the platform that they really should have.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear that they're going to start doing that again, because I think there's real potential with the platform the way it is. The Sansar platform, by contrast, and again, this is sort of path of least resistance and portability in terms of Sansar. I don't think Sansar has really picked up the way Linden Lab has sort of wanted it to, and you sort of hit on something where you were talking about, this region that we're in here is sitting on your desktop, so you can come in and you can custom configure this however you want. You can bring in other designer stuff if you want to, and I guess you could from a collaborative standpoint. I mean, if I wanted to put stuff down here and you gave me build permissions, and I could put stuff down.
Oh yeah, people bring stuff to the show over the while,
No, but I mean to leave it here permanently. As a type of thing, right?
I would break the copyright law and steal it off you.
Well,
stop it.
Yeah, but I mean,
sorry, I'm joking.
but I mean, in Second Life, we do collaborative things all the time. We have builds which are the creation of, like, our library, the big library that we've got in Second Life that everybody seems to love. I put up the building. Mel's been doing a lot of the internal work. We've got other people that have come over and they've said, "Oh, do you want a copy of this? I'll put it down here for you." There's probably a dozen different owners of objects inside the library. And that's the same with any other library. You go anywhere in the world, you go to any library, in a science center, a museum, they never own all the stuff that's in there, right? It's always a mishmash of various different owners, right? And so, I mean, if we want to do anything with that, it becomes very difficult, because people have contributed to the experience, but once they've put those things down, unless they've given us carte blanche access to all of their inventory, which is the stupidest thing in the world, their entire inventory, there's nothing that we can do with it once it's on the region except return it to them, right? And that's crazy. It's sort of like borrowing your neighbor's lawnmower and then not being able to use it because he hasn't given you permission to push the thing.
Yeah, well, my solution to that was you would offer offline, or at least in an open sim area where you got all rights, and take all those donations in, build it, and as you said, as you describe it, an experience, right? They are contributing to that experience. If you then take the whole entity and deploy it to, say, 5 different platforms, it is still the same experience. It's just in 5 different places, and you're marketing the experience, as it were. So,
assuming you can port what's there, including all of the various different owner object permissions, and that in effect becomes essentially part of the problem. The other part of the problem that we've got is, again, I'm going to come back to this idea of the path of least resistance. So right now, if I want to create an experience in Sansar, right, essentially I'm the only one that can go in and play with that experience, that scenario that's there. I can't have 5 or 6 people come in and contribute objects from their inventory in order to add to that particular scenario. Now, I could be wrong. I haven't gotten the full grasp of how to manipulate stuff in Sansar because it's a lot more difficult than it is inside Second Life. And I haven't had the time to sit down and really go through it the way I would like to, right?
I think it's just a lot different. That's the problem. I'm in the same position. I just sort of gave up.
It's really kind of cool because I mean, as a competitive type thing to something like maybe Unity, I can see where they're going with this, and I can see where they're sort of saying, you know, the whole WordPress thing with regards to I can sort of see it. The analogy really doesn't work, but there's an element of it that you could argue is sort of like WordPress.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Ebby was fond of saying it'd be the WordPress of Second Life, and then of the metaverse, and then it was kind of will be the YouTube of the metaverse. Didn't quite know which, but you know, I look at something like Sciencebase that's, you know, been in development for 7 years, and same thing. And Sciencebase is a different platform. It's built with Unity, but so are thousands of games and stuff like that. It's like JavaScript on the web. You know, it's JavaScript is something that runs inside the web code, but it's all over the place as an authoring tool. Now, what has happened with Sansar is, of course, Linda now said they seem to be obsessed with their walled garden because, oh no, you know, instead of taking an industry standard that would offer them some compatibility on the, or, you know, in the competitive field, they went and wrote their own engine so they don't have to run Unity. So it's proprietary and nobody can get into it, and you've got to log in to them to upload your material and everything else. So anything that was written in JavaScript, for example, to connect two platforms together, right, could easily connect to Unity platforms together, however different they may be. But it could never connect to Sansar because they've insisted on having every little element of the underlying code, you know, unique to them and proprietary. And, you know, most people think the era of closed worlds will soon be over. And that will put them, both Sansar and Second Life, in a problematic position. They'll go on for a long while. They've got a huge loyal audience for the small backwater they are.
It does, and to be fair, I mean the strategy worked for Apple, insofar as basically saying, well, you know, we're not going to be interoperable with anything else until such time as we're sort of forced to, but. But I mean, circumstances are different. I mean, we're in an age when Apple came out, they basically said, okay, we have our particular operating system, and Microsoft has theirs, and IBM has theirs, and then there's Linux, and you know, we're going to be a walled garden. Right, that's essentially how Apple established.
Actually, I think it's a bit different from that. I think basically what they said is, our operating system is going to work because we're going to make the hardware too. And I think the walled garden thing came out of that because hardware and software was always married as a complete product by Apple. Windows Microsoft always had to have PC partners and Linux and stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, by comparison, Microsoft was the open source platform of its time. Now, you know, that was I hate to say it was a particular, it really wasn't that long ago, but that was a particular age, a growing stage, an evolution of this whole information age, this period of transformation that we're in right at the moment, that's going to go on probably for another 50, 100, 200 years. And you can't look back 20 years ago and say, well, it worked for them then, so it should work for us now. No, everything has everything has changed in the way that people are expecting things to be interoperable, and the way that we work with data, and the way we be able to exchange ideas, exchange information, web APIs. I mean, everything is based upon, almost everything now is trying to run in the cloud, right? I mean, we're constantly scaling from this idea where everybody needs to own their own PC in the house, to no, you don't really need to own a PC in your house. What you need to own is you need to own a piece of hardware that will interface with the cloud, and everything that you want to do will operate through some type of I've forgotten the name of it, but blockchain will operate. So Bitcoin, right? So, and everything that you want to do will operate through some type of blockchain mechanism. It will run in the cloud. You don't need to worry about it. Just sit down, have fun, and go at it, right? The communications are not there yet to do this type of thing, but this is the direction we seem to be going.
I think the communications are already there, actually, but in terms of major take up of blockchain technologies and things, it's not there yet. But you've only got to look at Bitcoin to notice it's in the works, as it were. And Hyperfidelity is using blockchain from all down the line, not just currency, but virtual goods, identity checks. But you're coming back to this. I mean, the cloud has its limitations, I think. I mean, if somebody, let's say you use Adobe Photoshop these days, and you obviously have to subscribe, I think, now to Adobe's cloud. And when you open, it's like I have Avid's video editor software here, and nowadays they've changed it so it's running a little thing in the Windows tray which constantly checks the cloud, and it won't be. I can't actually run my video editor without actually being connected to the web and Avid constantly checking what I'm doing and verifying my license. But Adobe had a problem with their Creative Suite when their servers went down for nearly a whole day, and basically every designer using Photoshop, etc., on the planet wasn't able to use their Photoshop, So there might be limited, until we have networks that are reliable and stable all down the line, from the line coming into your house up to the huge data centers, with endless backups and stuff, so nothing ever goes offline. And electricity, where you never have backups, you still, we can't rely totally on that cloud. But you mentioned earlier on about, it's actually where we started the conversation, where you were talking about portability, and you were talking about the apps for this and that, and I forget the one you mentioned.
The other one that I keep trying to get in, and we keep getting sidetracked off it, is this idea of the path of least resistance. And this I think is part of the reason why people have it's not the fact that people have deliberately gone away from OpenSim and Second Life. Yes, we've seen a decline in numbers, but I think it's more to do with this idea of the path of least resistance. If you as an educator, if you as a designer, if you pick your area, right? It doesn't matter across the board. If you could do something really cool inside Second Life, but it's going to take you 3 weeks to set it up, just so then you can do something for maybe like a 2-hour conference or a concert or whatever else, as compared to doing the same thing or something similar that might get you the same result by doing it in YouTube, which is only going to take you maybe, if you understand what you're doing, let's say it'll take you, 2 hours to set up.
Yeah.
Right. The people will take the path of least resistance. That's just a given, right?
And I agree. It's like this show. I mean, people, some people will be tuning in, watching live now. I'm not going to embarrass us by getting James to tell me it's 2. A lot more will watch it during the week, etc. But it is easier for them to get the link from YouTube and say we've now gone live. They can't come to the audience here, quite frankly, and it just doesn't matter a damn. People say, why haven't we got a live audience? Well, it doesn't actually affect people watching it. You know,
it doesn't. But I guess the point here is that, you know, we put a lot of hours into the Virtual Worlds Conference.
Oh yeah,
right? And so we have, we have 8 regions that are all fully built out. People spend hundreds of hours putting that thing together. Yeah. We've got another 4 or 5 different groups that are big supporters of ours. I mean, if we get a lot of proposal submissions in through the door, I mean, we can expand it out such that we could be running 700 proposals. Yeah. To be quite honest, I mean, that's the nice thing about a virtual environment. We can scale this as big as we need, or we can bring it down as small as we need. But the effort to put something like that on when you've got 2,000 and 3,000 people showing up to a conference for 3 to 4 days of a main conference plus 2 weeks of virtual experiences either side, it's worth the time and effort. It's the path. It is the path of least resistance to do something like this, where you get good information out and you have the opportunity for people to come and to network on their own time, on their own, when they feel that they need to, and if they miss something, things are available through YouTube or whatever else. Yeah. Now, you look at the difference between something like that and an educator coming in saying, I need to put on something special for my class. My class is 2 hours. For a college class, my class is 2 hours, right? It's going to take me 3 weeks to set this up.
Oh, right? No way.
That is not the path of least resistance. So what are they going to do? They're going to start looking at, this is why I was saying, as other technologies become more competitive, right? You look at what's happening with tablets, what's happening with your mobile phone, what's happening with augmented reality, what's happening with even just high tech, right? I mean, you look at certain things that you can do with. I know this is a bad example, but I'm going to throw drones out there because I mean, there's a whole sporting industry now that's grown up around drone racing, right? I mean, it's a bad example for education, but I mean, it's just things have changed, right? And things are going to continue to change. And there will constantly be more and more and more options for people to take a look at that they can pick and choose from. Now you look at something like Open Simulator and Second Life, which have essentially, while they're extremely good, they have essentially remained inside certain parameters. They have evolved, but they have not evolved as much as some of these other things. And this is where people are taking the path of least resistance. They're basically saying we could do some really cool things in here, but we could also do some of these other things. So which one am I going to choose? Some educators, some people from nonprofits and other groups have chosen to stay inside Second Life, and they've chosen to stay inside the Open Simulator community. Part of the reason for doing that is because they are building on previous experience, and the types of scenarios that they're developing, the types of experiences that they are developing appear, and this is what we've been finding from the last couple of years of the conference, they're getting more complex, they're getting more involved, they're becoming more detailed in terms of what it is that they're doing. So while the numbers appear to be dropping, the level of quality that you see, the level of quality that you see in musicianship, the level of quality that you see in avatar skins, the level of quality that you see in mesh builds, it's going up every single year, right? So at a certain, right, and this is the thing that I think a lot of people that left Second Life, right, to explore other options or to go into Open Simulator, what have you, Well, sorry, Open Simulator is a bad example, but I mean, looking at Sansar and Unity and some of these other things, this is part of the thing that I think they're missing. Is they're missing the fact that those people that are still dedicated to these particular platforms are doing some amazing things with it. And this is in part, the VR, the VR revolution. This is where people are doing things which are game changing, and we're finding more and more of that as we go along. That it's no longer simply a matter of somebody putting up a build, right? They're basically saying, "Oh, look, Eiffel Tower, right? Great." People are making it actually do what they're actually.
I mean, I hear an open sim. I mean, you're hyper good around stuff, and there's no center volume of people like this in Second Life. But I'm constantly amazed by builds and things that people have done, improving all the while. But
and the complexity of what you see and the complexity of the experience.
I mean, Second Life
has been improving all the way along.
Yeah, I mean, Second Life and Open Sim share a commonality there because of what they afford us. I mean, it's very easy to have communities and interaction. But it's also very easy to collaborate on things, like working on things together. And a lot of these are things that none of the new platforms offer. You've referred to Unity quite a bit, but Unity is not really a platform. It's like a page makeup tool. So the platform is the magazine that comes out of it.
It's not, but it's similar to Sansar in that, or rather Sansar similar to Unity in that it assumes that you have one central designer that's responsible for putting everything together, and that the collaboration occurs outside of the environment.
Well, actually, that's not necessarily true because, a lot of things are built with Unity, and a lot of things built with Unity, which remember is the machine that makes the worlds, right? A lot of them are static, like Sansar, but others have very strong interactivity added to them, mostly because Unity, as well as being a world deployment platform, is a game deployment platform.
But keep in mind, I'm not referring to the eventual end product where you have interactivity that's going on there. I'm referring to the design process, where if you want to build something in Unity, you have to have a copy of the Unity software, and it's not as if you can basically say, "Hey guys, let's 4 of us get together right now. We're all going to go into the same design studio and work on this together at the same time."
Well, that isn't actually quite true. I don't want to hype Science Base here, but Science Base is built in Unity, but it is true that people who design whole sets and regions and things like that will often work in Unity offline and upload them to the background servers. But as time is going by, the viewer for Sciencebase is including subsets of the Unity tools that they've customized into the viewer experience. So although you may be entering a region that was completely built with Mesh offline, you can still build little, smaller things using the subset of a very complicated program. So, the Unity tools that you can get to in the environment are more akin to what we have in OpenSim and Second Life. In other words, you can maybe, it's all coming together, but, you might be able to use a subset of clothes to make your own shirt or jacket, not just buy one and wear it, but also make it. And, more and more of those collaborative tools can be programmed into the environment, just as the master mesh terrain is programmed into the environment. But it doesn't, you are not necessarily, like Sansar, restricted to going to the experience, lapping it up, and then going away again. In Sciencebase, whose metaphor is very similar, you can actually use collaboration tools to do things. And, it's still in beta there too. And, but every week there seems to be something more you can do. Because the tools that made the world possible are being added to the interface for the world itself.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean, which
yeah.
brings it more in line with OpenSIM and, of course, Second Life.
It's starting to, yeah. The Second Life still seems to be the gold standard on this, but this is where I'm very surprised, because Second Life did provide a phenomenal opportunity for its competition to go out there and to basically say, oh, guess what? They've stopped putting money into this particular platform. Maybe we could develop something better. And nobody took up the challenge. That's the thing that's the thing that's boggled my mind. So yes, there are a few groups. Yet I knew that Unity was actually looking at some of these particular things going forward, but it's still nowhere close to having the ease of use and everything else that Second Life does.
No, Unity never will, because Unity is an authoring platform that works offline until you finish the job and deploy it.
Yeah.
But the worlds that are created in Unity can, just like Second Life, have authoring tools built into them.
Yeah.
And so the fact that the world, it's like saying, I can't build the whole of Second Life because I haven't got the tools to do it. You don't need to build a whole of Second Life. All you need is the tools that Second Life makes available to you once you're in the world. Unity is, it's very hard to describe, but it is like a page makeup language. There's no platform called Unity, really.
Yeah,
it's an authoring environment. And what comes out of Unity, Pathfinder and Reaction Grid, did a fully kind of interactive thing they built in there back in the day, which was designed to emulate OpenSIM and Second Life. They didn't build a world. They built it was a very small world, but the exercise was to build it as an interactive viewer that could do things. Another person uses Unity to simply create an immersive environment where you can do nothing but walk. Unity produces that wide range of options. That is why it's a surprise that Sensor built its own engine, because Unity is the engine that is one of several, but it's the engine that is powering this. It's like servers on the web. We've got there are 1,000 types of web pages that you go to when you click on them. You don't really consider that they're all made where the makeup is all done in, say, Adobe Dreamweaver or whatever the current fashion is. It's the end result that's important. And it's the same as Second Life. It's what Linda and Alex built that is important, and the fact that they afforded those tools for us, and did much the same in Second Life. So, Unity is a tool set, but it's not for the public, if you see what I mean. Yeah. You can get it for free, and you can learn to use it, but I can't learn it. I've been having to use it, but I only know the tiniest fraction of it, and I'm getting a bit old for the learning curve, But it doesn't stop me. It doesn't stop me using the end result of that authoring system. So just as Maker makes a nice web page for me, so Unity might have been the program that was responsible for the experience I'm in.
And I think this is where some of these companies have gotten it a bit wrong, because they're assuming that, like, we've gone from Philip's original concept where everybody could go into a virtual world and build their build whatever inside their imagination, to this idea that the end result is actually all that matters. And I think if you look at things like WordPress, right? If you look at WordPress, if you look at Joomla, like the number of sites that are out there which are designed for people to go out there and be creative. There's millions of people out there that want to have that creative outlet. Yeah. And if all that matters is the end result, then why are these people going out there and using WordPress and other tools in order to develop their own websites? There's a need within our social structures for people to be creative and for people to be able to express themselves.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more on that. I think maybe it's just my understanding of what sort of what's behind the scenes, the different levels of the way things work. Now, I mean, the community, the creative, the place where creators can get together and create and collaborate, and communities can form, and the equivalent of real world spaces for our avatars. That is really what it's all about. And anything that doesn't offer the full gamut of OpenSim or indeed Second Life in many respects is lacking. But what I'm saying is that what I was saying with ScienceBase is that just because it's authored with Unity, it's it's not even WordPress has to be authored underneath by some other software that creates WordPress, if you see what I mean. So it's a level thing. But I actually wanted to get back to where we started, which was when the path of least resistance, basically, and the provision of apps. One thing I'd like your thoughts on this, because you raised it, and you said people go for the path of least resistance, and there are all these thousands of tools now that can afford this and collaboration and stuff. But one thing I think I'm experiencing is that I wonder when the app concept bubble will burst, because to me, right, there is a total profusion of these possibilities now. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing per se, because the more toys I got to play with, the more I love it. Of course, I'm a kid at heart. But, and this is the big but, as somebody used to say to me, I'm taking as an example, I've got Skype, right? I think Skype's ubiquitous. Everybody's got it. I'm holding a conference, right, in a few weeks' time. And, we are set up. There are far better solutions that will afford us to do things much better than we can do them with Skype. There's Discord. There's all sorts of other things that have more advanced features. But everybody says, I don't want to download another program, and I don't want to try out that. I just want to go with what I've got. I'm used to it. Skype has become ubiquitous. We are forced to use Skype, even though it seems every German in the virtual world has a thing about not using Skype. I say, well, look, you can't partake in the conference. We can't manage the back end using 5 different communication systems. We got to go for what you call the path of least resistance, the one that almost everybody's got. It surprises me how many people still don't have Skype, but it's as you say, we are organizing based on the path of least resistance, and the participants will be participating on the same basis, if you see what I mean. But I would prefer, I'm quite sure James would prefer too, that we switch to something like Discord, which offers us, we'd have to practice this out. It offers us a whole lot of other facilities. But if you come to the show today and I'd said, instead of patching in your audio via Skype, can you do it by Discord? You would have said, what's Discord? Or I haven't got that downloaded and stuff. So the path of least resistance, there's loads of stuff out there that if it was ubiquitous, would actually be the path of least resistance, and it would afford us a lot of things. But we're up against this stumbling block, which is that not only the people like to stick with what they've got and what they know, but it's also the sheer profusion of alternatives. I think people are now beginning to find confusing. Sure, you've got a tablet and you've got your favorite apps. Your favorite apps are interoperating because they're normally, as you say, in the cloud on the web, and they, you're in your newsreader, you can Twitter the news or Google it or whatever you want to do. They interconnect. They're basically web services reformatted to be something called an app for a large part. And but I find the profusion of these is the problem. I work with 3 or 4 apps a day. This time next year, I'll probably be using a different 3 or 4 apps because I'll find improved versions. But I find it very difficult, and I follow all this stuff to keep up with the sheer profusion of possibilities.
So let me throw a little bit of a prediction out here, because and I'm willing to be called on this, 5-10 years from now.
Yeah.
The essential problem. I don't see. So let me address this in a couple of different points. One is I don't see apps decreasing at any point over the next 50, 60 years. I think that there is enough on the table in terms of disruptive technology that's going to be coming out, especially, in the next decade, that is truly going to be game changing. And that as those particular types of technologies come out and, groups are out there, they have the ability in order to work with these particular types of things, that we're just in some cases we're going to see new apps. In other cases, we're going to see a re-envisioning of an old type of app. So the direct answer to your question is that one. However, I think the more important component to it, however, is the fact that our internet bills, right, from a first world society, right. So we're gonna let's put third world countries aside for the moment, because that's a whole different topic. But let's just focus on the first world for the moment. The every single time one of these particular apps comes out, the very first thing that it wants you to do is it basically says, oh, well, it's only $10 a month to subscribe to this service, or it's only $5 per user per month to subscribe to this service.
Plus your internet bill.
plus your internet bill, plus your electricity, plus everything else, right? So it's gotten to the point, right? Like in comparison to even just 20, 25 years ago, it's gotten to the point where the amount of money that people are spending for their cable, for their internet, for all these various different little apps and everything else that are out there, that easily come up to as much or more than what they're paying on their mortgage right now.
Yeah.
Right? Or what you're paying in rent. It's almost like the half of your budget, right? Well, maybe not half, right? In my case, half, but that's a different story.
Person. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the person. But I mean, the cost of, and I'm going to go back a real way, right? Let me go back to 1970s. In 1970, the biggest worry that you had was how much your telephone bill was going to cost, and it was still your basic telephone cost was still under, for most households, was probably under like $10-15 a month to have a telephone service. And oh my God, you could phone anybody around the world. Isn't this a lovely society? Now we're at the point where we're spending $200, $300, $400 a month for the same services. That economically, that is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. That is absolutely totally not sustainable. I could totally see. Right now we've got Facebook, we have Google, and we have Amazon, right, that are out there that are acting as aggregators of different forms of technology like this little graphic app that I was talking about earlier, right? I could totally see Facebook going out basically saying, ooh, let's buy it out.
Yeah,
right?
let's buy it out and strip it into one of our services.
Right. Because here's the thing. How often do I actually want to use a graphic apps like that? I mean, I pay for a subscription to MindMeister because I use it often enough that it's not quite worth what I'm paying for, but I don't want to lose access to the service. And this is the problem with a lot of these apps, is that you tend to want to use these apps for a limited purpose for a limited period of time. And then you might not use it again for 6 months. But in the meantime, they basically say, no, you want to pay us $10 a month so that you can have access to this all the time. Yeah. Well, I'm not using it all the time, right? Well, so if you look at aggregators like, and I think they're sort of going this way. They haven't quite gone this way yet, but I could completely see this happening. And I could see a couple of other big players potentially coming out of the woodwork. And because sometimes companies come up, right? Like Amazon beat out AOL, right? I mean, in terms, and well, a number of companies everybody beat out AOL for that matter.
Amazon beat out the high street around the world. Come on.
Yeah. But I mean, you've got, right, and then you've got CompuServe, and you've got a pile of others that were all competing, right? But for a period of time, AOL was it. If you weren't on AOL, if you weren't on MySpace, you just, oh my God, how could you possibly claim that you were on the internet, right? And now they're a footnote in history at this particular point in time. I mean, they're still out there, but other things have passed them by. And I think there is a potential for this between Facebook and Google and Amazon. But I think one of the things that we're hopefully going to see is that there'll be companies out there that will start to aggregate these particular types of app services. So it will become one of these things where you go to Facebook and Facebook turns around and says, we know we don't charge anybody for having a Facebook account, right? But we have this wonderful collection of applications, right? Collaborative applications.
An app store.
No. I'm not talking about an app store. I'm talking about a collection of applications, right? So let's say they bought out this company that does the graphing. Let's say they bought out MindMeister. Let's say they bought out a dozen other different companies that focus on doing one thing very, very well and doing it inside a collaborative space.
Yeah.
Right? And they basically, and all of these companies have a free version of their software, right? So Facebook could come along and say, look, we're going to buy out all of these companies. We're going to take what it is that they've got. We're going to make the free version available to everybody on Facebook, right? Yeah. If you've got a Facebook account, you've got access to all of these particular apps. But if you want the paid version of all of them, right, we're going to charge you, I don't know, $15 a month for the whole suite, everything.
Right. Okay.
Right. As compared to $5 per user per month for 20 of them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, we're talking about the path of least resistance. People will always take the path of least resistance. And so, yes, there's all kinds of apps that are out there, but one of the things that we have not seen, which we used to see a lot, right? Like Microsoft does this a lot, right? I mean, Microsoft goes out there and they basically say, oh, look, there's a niche little company that looks like it has something that might be competitive with ours. Let's buy them out, right? And they got the cash that they can just say,
yeah, they can just walk over you, throw you the cash, and then stop you out of existence so they can concentrate on their own product.
Right. Well,
or integrate it. Yeah.
Right. And this has been the common business model for hundreds of years, which is, niche industries start to build up until the point that they're competitive, and then a larger company comes in and they buy them out. Right. And a lot of big businesses, IBM has been built on this process. Microsoft has been built on this process. There's hundreds of different. Procter and Gamble, right? Huge in terms of buying out different companies that come up with different products. They basically come along and say, "Ooh, that product's cool. Here's a check." Right?
And for sure. Yeah.
Right. And they've got the money that they can just do it. Right. Which in some ways is kind of cool. In some ways it's disappointing, because innovation really comes out of these niche companies. So you need the niche companies to be out there in order to bring the really innovative products to market.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But when you look at all of these apps that are out there right at the moment, nobody is really aggregating them. Right. And that's the piece that seems to be missing. And I think once a couple of these, especially a couple of the big ones, right, like Google's sort of doing it, right? Facebook has been on the margins of that, and Microsoft has got their own Microsoft is crazy. They do their own thing. But nobody's really aggregating these particular apps and basically saying, let's get this to a point where we're actually going to be able to make it profitable for us to absorb these niche industries, but then bring the cost down so that the people that want to use these things on a sporadic basis, maybe they only want to use them once every 6 months, have the opportunity that they can do that, right? Without having to pay $100 or $150 or $200 per month for every single one of these apps that are out there, right? And a large company has the scale that they can do that. Niche companies don't. So niche companies have to charge that $5, $10, $15, $20 per subscriber.
Yeah, I think it's a balance, is it? The niche companies, the quick starters and stuff need to be there long enough to innovate. And then if they do sell out, then although I must admit, I don't really trust some of these big companies to ever bring prices down. It's like these days they seem to. It seems to be more driven by greed, oh, we'll buy up all those services so we can make more profits. We know they don't offer them any cheaper, and they break them. They're very good at breaking them. Microsoft in particular, buys something.
What the heck is it? Computer Associates. Computer Associates is a software aggregating firm. They do that all the time. They, if anybody comes to you from Computer Associates and says, "Here's a check," they're large enough that they can just throw them. They're one of these particular types of companies. They're large enough that they can just come in and throw money at somebody. But as soon as they do, it's pretty much a death knell for whatever that piece of software is.
Yeah. Exactly.
They are, from what I've seen, I mean, they just seem to be notorious for taking a really good piece of software and then just and they take the bits and pieces that they want and they throw the rest of it to the dogs until such time as it gets to the point where nobody wants to use it anymore. And yet some of the companies that they buy out have really, really good concepts associated with them that really need to be nurtured. Right?
Let's move on a bit from this. I know you're pressed for time as well, and we've got quite long yet. But on the related matter, really, I'm actually going to come back to apps in a vague sort of roundabout way. You say you think the app culture and that thing will be 40, 50 years or something. Something that is bothering me in the sense of the way these mega corporations are now just buying up everything and integrating it into themselves, which of course defeats innovation unless there's time for things to evolve. But also something else that is becoming very obvious in the deployment of apps and services is this trend towards, well, it's not more than a trend, the introducing AI, artificial intelligence, into services. And whereas you see this profusion of apps being around possibly for a longer time than I think we're going to get to the point where, I already talked to Madam A on the Echo. I'm not mentioning her name or she'll interrupt the program. And of course, you can say, "Hey, G," to various devices. And if you've got Apple, you can call up Miss S, etc., right, to do things for you. And I think we're very close, right, to coming to the point, right, where I might say, "Hey, G," right, let me design a room, right? And she will immediately respond by going to the cloud, finding and opening an app that allows you, or giving you a choice of apps that allow you to design a room, right? Maybe 3D, maybe 2D, whatever. The chances are at the end of the day, the first choices you'll get will be apps, or services that Google own, because why not? You asked for it to be done by Google, but instead of searching for things by names, like take me to an app called Splatter Splotter or something, you will just say, "I want a Splatter Splotter on a bit of canvas, please. Hey G, give me a canvas," And I think the path of AI routines is evolving so fast that I think it will I think this what I want to do command, which will probably be issued in voice, will actually come to fruition long before those 40, 50 years of app supremacy, you know. And I think you know, at the moment you look through your menus, you find your apps and what you want to do. And as I said, there's such a profusion. I download some and I never use them again after playing the first time. But if I'm starting to move to an AI system where I tell my personal assistant, I don't give them a command to open something. Well, maybe I do on the, you know, open virtual world, whatever. But the metaphor changes to what I want to do, as opposed to the page I want to go to, or the world I want to go to, or the game I want to play, if you see what I mean. And I think that when it comes to fruition that will be a real disruptor, because it will change the way we talk to our technology. At the moment, we're just getting used to talking to our devices instead of, you know, mousing and fiddling around. But it's evolving so fast that I think, you know, the subroutines and everything, and the learning aspects of AI. I mean, it can just move so fast. Look at the difference in what Amazon's Echo can do now than even it could do a year ago. And it's all fed from the cloud. So, of course, it's always online, using your bandwidth, snooping on you, if you want to think of it that way. It's totally there live. But, of course, it's great, because anything I say to it that it can do, it will do. And what I can tell it to do at the moment is a lot of useful things around the house. But I predicted that within a year, that would be doubled, tripled. And maybe in 5 years, the scope of what it can do and what it can interpret will be far greater. It might be able to just put up, you know, I might be able to talk to a home assistant. It switches on the TV screen. It loads the app via the web onto a giant screen and tells me to put a glove on so that I can interact. And I think those changes, those profound changes, are things that are going to come quicker. And, you know, the path of least resistance, I don't think people are going to be putting on virtual world headsets in their own home, walking around with them. Gamers, yeah, and people going to arcades and out of the house experiences. But, you know, when it comes to the point where you can just put augmented reality glasses on, that's a different matter. It's easy, and if they're as cheap as phones, for example, then, you know, the market's there. But, you know, I know at the moment my Android phone, you know, I don't really have to go to it and open any apps. I just say, hey, G, and it will open such and such, and it will do it. So I think that interfacing metaphor is changing on the, you know, it's changing our phones and it's changing our houses with smart devices. And ultimately, I think that will change, especially Microsoft out that way, it will change our computer, you know, desktop computers too. And when you've got that kind of voice controlled operating sort of system, then the need to look at your menu of individual apps and things is going to become much less and less. You're going to be actually demanding the functionality, be it creative or something totally non-creative and boring, like watching a film. It's simply going to be a matter of speaking out what you want, and it all happens around you. And, you know, just in that respect, I think the idea of 1,000 apps on the screen and a profusion of them is on its way out. But at the same time, I think the danger, as you say, is like, you know, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples, the Microsofts, you know, endlessly buying stuff up. I mean, Facebook's never innovated anything. It's just buys things and incorporates them. Same with Microsoft. Apple, of course, have had their periods of innovation, but some people suspect that's over. Google still do innovate a bit, but not in the way they used to. You know, the market, you know, when you've got that much money, it's so much easier to just look at all the startups, buy them up, you know. And, you know, I think increasingly those services will be delivered to us by, you know, by those giants. And every one of them, I think, wants to take over. I mean, Facebook worries me, not only because it's insidious already, but they want, you know, Facebook Spaces, their virtual world, which fortunately at the moment still looks really cruddy, you know, to be that shared space of the future. But, you know, they want a world where everybody goes into the virtual world and it's their home and they collaborate and talk to their friends. The only difference is the home is on Facebook. You know, everything you do in your life will be on the Facebook platform, including your virtual life. I'm ranting, aren't I?
So, well, I'm waiting. Yeah. I'm waiting for the question because there's a dozen things I could have jumped in on there but I thought you had a question with that as well.
Right now, I'm sort of just, I'm almost sort of putting the counterpoint to your idea of the longevity of the apps and things. And
okay, well, let me throw a bit.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let me throw a bit of a counterpoint in there. So there's a little bit of a danger in terms of. So I guess from my perspective, there's two distinct types of AI. So the type of your AI that you're referring to is really more of a predictive heuristics type of thing, which is sort of trying to anticipate people's needs before they realize that they actually have them. And so when you say, a lot of it is context sensitive. So when you say, gee, you want to, watch something on TV, that it goes through and it picks a pile of stuff for you. The problem with that is that it's all the results that you get are based upon, first of all, they can be manipulated, and second of all, they're based on what the most common, what might be considered to be the most common things that are going on. So
it's like a search engine, it will go for, what we got on top is what's most popular kind of thing.
Right. And actually I was going to refer to Google in a moment with regards to this, because Google's a really good example of this particular type of a problem. But let's take the thing about a movie thing. So let's say you've got access to every single movie in the world, and whatever it was, a week, 2 weeks ago, whenever the heck it came out, you basically said, I want to see a blockbuster hit. Well, the first thing it brings up is Thor Ragnarok. Right?
Oh, right.
Because everybody wants to go see that bloody movie, right? But what you miss out on is the hundreds of small theater or small budget movies that may be as good or better than the big blockbusters. But because they are not the most common thing that comes up across a broad range of people, especially inside a given demographic or in a particular geographic area, you don't get those results unless you're willing to dive down 10, 20, 30 pages to all of a sudden say, hey, wait a second, why didn't you tell me about this?
I think this is a user thing a lot, though, too, because clearly search results are prioritized. But I mean, if I put a Google search in and I can separate a lot of different values and things, I can tighten the search. And likewise, when I'm using Amazon's Lady, I can actually specify she look up movies with both this actress, and this actor, and this director. And she recognizes the limitations of the qualifications. So she's not going to show the #1 blockbuster unless it was directed by that director and had all three of those actors in it. So,
right.
But if we get used to talking to these things in the way we might in real life, you don't just say what's on at the movies and wait for the list of the blockbusters of the week. You actually say, are there any good detective movies shown locally or something?
You could. I think more often than not, again, we're talking path of least resistance here. That the part of the ultimate goal of AI is basically present you with the most common options that are going to satisfy whatever you think your need is at that particular point in time. So if you basically say, I need wine for dinner, right? I mean, it just find me something, right? I mean, quite often that's the way people phrase things. And so any type of an AI, without knowing anything else that's going on, is going to come back and they're going to provide you probably the most common types of wines based upon what it is that you've looked at in the past, or what other people, again, in the area or close by tend to want to buy.
Oh, the wine comes in the face.
And it's at that point that you realize that in order to get the AI to actually, or any particular type of thing like that, to actually give you the types of results that you need, you now have to start thinking about no, I didn't want that wine. I wanted a different wine. No, I didn't want that. I want a different wine. It's almost like being a 5-year-old child in front of some of these AI type programs that are trying to figure out what it is that you want. I mean, you're literally acting like a 5-year-old child in front of these things. It's like, no. Yeah, I wanted a cookie. No, I didn't want that cookie. I wanted the other cookie. Right. And
it's, do you know, people laugh at me who overhear me, but every time I ask my Lady A to do something, the Amazon machine, she does it most of the time and then says, okay. And I always say, thank you. I don't need to say thank you. I always do. It's funny.
Right.
You get into the habits, and I get more explicit as time goes by about what to do. But okay.
Yeah, but I mean, but I think this is, like I said, I think this is dangerous because I go on the internet and I want to do research, right? Yeah. And I put in search terms and I think I'm trying to be specific, and what I get is I get back a load of crap. I get even on Google. Google is terrible for this, right? I'll put in search terms for something, and then all of a sudden the first 3 results are actually linking to a page that links to 20 other pages and is full of spam and whatever else. I mean, it's horrid in terms of some of the sometimes the results that you're looking for are in fact inside the top 10 things that Google returns. If you're doing something that a lot of other people have Googled the same question, but I'm trying to remember the stat. I don't have it in front of me, but I think there's something like 15% of all queries given to Google are things that have only ever been asked once by one person, right? And everything else, right? The majority. So it's probably this 80-20 rule thing, right? But I don't know what the actual number is. So don't peg me on that. So don't give me grief for this. But the number was it was a low number, but it was larger than I thought it would be. And yet the majority of us ask the same question to Google. So this is one of the ways that they manage to get their heuristics in order to go through and be predictive in terms of, okay, well, what it is that you're actually looking for. I'll give you a good case in point, though, in terms of some place where Google gets it wrong. A friend of mine was up here from Texas, and she was using my computer in order to do some searching, right? Yeah. For a class that she was doing, and she needed the results to be specific to the Texas area, right? But because she was up at my house, right, and I'm in Ontario, Canada.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So
Google basically said, "Oh, you're in Ontario," and it's like, no. These are not the results I need, and so it becomes. When you want Google to change the heuristics for a particular reason, it becomes extremely, and this is something that we found, it becomes extremely difficult to try to convince the search engine. Yeah. Right. And most AIs will do something similar to this. Once the AI is programmed in a particular direction, it becomes extremely difficult to try to convince the heuristics that you want something other than what it's giving you.
Yeah.
And this is I think one of the dangers with regards to AI is that it starts to compartmentalize demographics. Right. So if it knows that you're French, or if it knows that you're Black, or if it knows that you're Hispanic, or if it knows that you're of a particular religious faith, or, because these companies collect all kinds of demographics on us, right? They collect all kinds of ways that they try to segment who the individual user is. To a certain extent, some companies. Some companies do it for the specific intent. Like Facebook does it for the specific intention to sell it to other companies, right? That's how Facebook makes their money, right? Yes, they get money on advertising, but the majority of it is from basically saying we understand who our user base is, right? And that's how they make the platform free, right? And we accept that. We gladly give Facebook our information in terms of, okay, I'm white, I'm Canadian, I'm well educated, I have a good income, whatever, right? We go to Facebook, we say, there it is, right? They turn around, they sell it, right? That's what they do. But when you want to, all of a sudden, when you want to have the heuristics that are based on that information change the parameters, they basically say, no, we've already been told that you fit into this particular category, and they make it as difficult as possible in order to change the way in which things are presented. If I want to go and if I want to get peer-reviewed research with regards to things that I can actually look up, right? Like if I go into Google Scholar, for example, and I go into Google Scholar every so often because I got things that I need to research on. Sure. But quite often what I get, the top 10 results are all these really cool articles that belong to these databases I can't get into. And it's sort of like, why the hell did you bother to if I can't read the damn article, why the hell did you bother to bring it up?
I get that a lot too. I get that a lot too in my feeds. I click through and say, you've already watched your one free article this month. Please subscribe or something. Yeah. But very bad news.
But a number of these databases that are used for looking through peer-reviewed research are behind a subscription model, right? If I wanted to look up that particular type of information, right, then I would go into, there's different mechanisms I can go into not using Google, right? But I mean, there's different mechanisms that I can do to go in and I can look at peer-reviewed articles where I can actually get the damn article. But it makes no sense when you're using the public internet to be able to go on things and basically say, why is there not an option on here where I can restrict this to publicly available peer-reviewed sources only, and not the restricted journal articles that are only available through a subscription, right? And again, these are things where you can't, the AI is programmed by individuals, right? And so that I think is part of the danger that we have with regards to a lot of these particular things, because it essentially the I'm going to throw a little dystopian thing out here. Essentially the technology is directing the population without them understanding it. We just simply accept this. It's directing the population in a particular social direction, which isn't necessarily the healthiest thing for us as a society. Absolutely. So yes, I am the first one to jump on board to basically say AI is wonderful, but I'm also the first one to jump on board and say, but there's a dark side to this that we have to be cognizant of. And it behooves us to go back to companies like this that are putting in these particular types of AI type programs and say,
I'm more keen on the concept of AIs as baby programs that just duplicate and self-learn and aren't dependent on the person writing it. But there is that very big danger. I read a novel not so long ago, or a bit from it, like the Asimov's laws of robotics. Robots don't harm humans and stuff like that. But there was a particular scenario where the robot can't make its choice because it's breaking one or other of the laws. Yes. Ideally, there's an artificial intelligence at work that takes it on balance and can somehow work out which path is the better, the better of the two evils or whatever. And if you're in a very difficult situation if it can't do that. So, if the AI is too restricted, it can't use, patterns to work out which the best option is. And of course, if it's bad, if it's maliciously programmed, it might always choose the worst, the most malicious option, So, I mean, there's always a danger with all these technologies of we need human intervention at just about every level of the kind of pyramid of, technology. This is something I think is crucial. To make sure that factories don't operate themselves and, start producing the wrong thing or something. But, it's a thing. Let me, I'm getting quite conscious of time. Actually, on your behalf more than anything else. Let me go back.
Run soon, so.
Yeah, I'm going to go back up. We'll flip back to your slide up on the screen later. I'm just going to flip forward one to another slide you gave me, which is a nice, interesting thing. And we're changing the subject completely. As you know, I have great difficulty pronouncing Erudition, but it's literally 2 or 3 weeks now since you got back from that. I thought you might like to let us know how it went.
It is. It went. So Erudition was the first in real life, quote unquote, conference that Rockcliffe has put on, and so there's a lot of stuff that we learned from that. That was great. At the same time, I mean, we were hoping that we would have a bit of a better response. A lot of feedback that we've gotten from different people. One is that they really want us to change the name Erudition, so we're going to do that for next year. We don't know yet what we're going to change it to, but the dates for next year's conference have already been set. So next year's conference is going to be October 11, 12, and 13, and we're going to be in San Francisco next year. So 2018. So we're hopefully by the end of this month, we will have a call for proposal. End of this month, early next month, we'll have a call for proposal out on that. One of the things that we're trying to do with this conference is through VWBPE, we already know that there's a huge, from a cost perspective, from a time perspective, we can run fairly big conferences inside a virtual environment, and that's phenomenal, right? Mm-hmm. So, we can very easily get 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people into a conference. And if what you're doing is lecture presentations, if what you're doing is, even if it's hands-on from a virtual perspective, a virtual conference makes a lot of sense, right? So you can still have the social interaction with people. You can still have the parties, and you're not face to face with people, but I mean, you can still gain that engagement with others. And in some ways, it can be more effective. At the same time, there's something to be said for going to a conference where you're going to a specific venue. The personal interaction is literally more personal because you do have those facial expressions. It's really nice to actually be able to meet the people that you're actually dealing with. However, if you take a look at most conferences around the world, it's essentially you go to, and I'm going to pick on AACE. I haven't been to ISTE's conference yet. I want to go next year, but I'm going to pick on AACE because they run numerous big conferences per year. But here it is that they've got about 1,000 people that show up to their conference. They try to run close to 700 presentations in the course of 4 or 5 days, which is crazy. And essentially what you're doing is you're running from room to room and your ass is sitting inside a chair. Yeah. That's what you're doing for 4 days. That's what you're doing. Right. And every once in a while you come out, you get coffee, you go to the bathroom and you get lunch, and there's a little, quote unquote exposition. Other conferences have big exposition, like ISTE's apparently got a huge exposition from what I've heard. But for the most part, you're going to these particular places so you can sit your ass in a chair, right? And what we want to do with this particular conference, with the Rockcliffe conference, is I don't want it to turn into one of these particular conferences where you show up and you place your ass in a chair for 3 days. I want it to be a conference where people show up and they are doing things. So the first day that that because we had our annual general meeting on the October 12th. So for that particular day, we did have so the boat that you see there, that's the Delta King Hotel, and that's actually where we held the conference. That was cool in of itself, right? It's really small, really tiny. It's not wheelchair accessible, so we're probably not doing it again. Well, it's sort of wheelchair accessible, but it's difficult, right? I mean, but the rooms certainly are not, right? I mean, there's no possible way that somebody with a wheelchair, if they had mobility problems, could really stay there and be comfortable. But aside from that, I mean, we had picked this, and so we went with it. And so, but the first day we had some roundtable discussions, but then we also had workshops where people were up, they were about. We were working with a lot of the VR technology that we had brought with us. And, we tried to keep people mobile throughout what was going on. I mean, it wasn't about, like I said, it wasn't just about talking heads and having your ass in a chair. It was getting off onto your feet and actually handling the equipment, right? And that's the type of conference that we want to turn this into, is that there's a place and a time for having roundtables and for developing those particular types of interconnections with things. But to really engage people on a social level, to really engage people from a networking component, you have to give them some form of commonality in which to have a shared experience. And that's the thing that we're trying to build into real life conferences as we move forward, right? So, the Friday and Saturday, so the 13th and 14th, we were actually not in the hotel for those 2 days, right? I mean, we did come back to the hotel at the end of each day, but most of it was off-site. So we did 4 site tours. So we did the state capitol, we did Souter's Fort, we did the California Museum, and the train museum. As part of those, so we had, each half day was allocated to one of those. And it was really kind of interesting because first of all, nobody's ass was in a chair throughout the entire thing, right? You were up, you were moving, you were walking through the exhibits, and let me tell you, my back was sore at the end of it because I've been having back problems lately, but it's been always one of those things where I've looked at and I've said, no, people have to be up, they have to be moving, they have to be doing things, and they have to have that opportunity in order to mix and to have an opportunity to share ideas in small groups. And so that's part of what this conference is actually about. It's the ability to go in. And so we gave a bit of a theme prior to going to each of these particular venues. Most of it was centered on how these venues were using virtual and augmented reality and how they're communicating and working with the public. And a couple of places were using it very effectively. A couple of places weren't. So Sutter's Fort and the state capitol, for example, not really big on the whole virtual and augmented reality thing. You go to the California Museum, however, and a lot of interactivity in terms of, well, relatively speaking, not huge, right? Like it's not like going to the Ontario Science Center where everything is interactive, right? But from a museum standpoint, they had a fair bit of interactivity and they were trying to make good use of the internet. So from that standpoint, from the virtual perspective, from the ability to work with data coming from different data sources and what have you, they're trying, right? And that was really kind of neat. As a matter of fact, one of the silly things that, and I say it's a bit silly, but one of the things that actually sort of blew me away is that when you go into the California Museum, you go into the first room and there's this holder on the side of the wall where they actually have a description of all the exhibits you're about to see in Braille.
Oh, right. Very good.
So somebody who can't see can at least go through and they can read all the different descriptions that are as part of that particular exhibit. To a certain extent, I thought that was kind of amazing because it becomes very inclusive in terms of how you're engaging with people. So that I thought was kind of like, and it was so low tech. I mean, literally, it was a series of stapled papers sitting inside a folder at the side, and low tech notwithstanding, it made to me, it sort of changed my view of that particular museum because they were trying to make it inclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so, the state capitol had some interesting tour guides there. And we did arrange because we had one person down with us who was completely deaf. And we did arrange for a transcriptionist, right, to be available as part of our conference so that we could make the conference inclusive. And that went over very, very well because quite often, and it was interesting having conversations with the transcriptionists as well, because the transcriptionists were learning a little bit in terms of what we were doing. So we were giving guidance in terms of how to, like a lot of the short forms that we use, like instead of Second Life, you go SL and people know exactly what it is that you're talking about. I mean, these people have no clue because they've never been inside these particular environments. So part of it's a learning experience for them, but it also made the conversations go back and forth a lot easier. And so, we learned a lot from that and what it is that we're going to do on that standpoint for next year. I think the idea of having papers available in Braille is something I hadn't thought of. But seeing it inside the California Museum, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, what could we possibly do with that? Because I know there's a couple of people from Virtual Ability. Sorry, I keep putting an S on it, right?
Yeah.
Virtual Ability who have sight impairment. And if they decided that they wanted to come to the conference, how do we make the conference inclusive so that we can have them engage with the virtual and augmented experiences that we're trying to encourage as part of education and classroom and training and these particular types of things. And these are people who are already engaged in this particular type of virtual experience anyway. So they already know the challenges that are there in terms of trying to engage with this stuff. So, how do we make them comfortable in terms of what we're trying to do? So, and this has been a big thing that we've been trying to do with Rockcliffe all the way along, is we've been trying to we've been working with the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, in terms of how it is that we structure our courses and our selection of materials for, when we're training people to make sure that they can meet to all the Section 508 requirements. Rockcliffe, because we don't receive any federal funding or state funding or any funding for that matter, we do not require to adhere to the Section 508 requirements. Right. But we have, because of our work with Virtual Ability and because of our work within Second Life and working with a lot of people that have these particular types of challenges, we've chosen to make everything that we have fully, or as best we can, to make them as fully accessible as possible. So, and that's another thing that we want to do with this particular conference. And unfortunately, one of our presenters was late on the accessibility side of things, so we're going to hopefully fix that up for next year. But it's part of this is really, I think, on multiple fronts. I mean, like I said, trying to get people engaged, trying to get people connected with each other, getting people talking to one another. It's not simply about having somebody stand up on stage and say, I know better than everybody else, or I know something different from everybody else, depending on your point of view. But it's about presenting ideas and then getting them to be able to talk about them and to share ideas and to figure out how that's going to change the way in which they're going to engage with their own communities once they leave the conference. And we've already seen a couple of things that have happened. Like there's been some engagement between various different groups that we've had since then, which has been fairly positive. Now it becomes the question of, okay, well, is that type of thing sustainable? Can you continue to build on that as you go forward? I think as the conference continues to grow, that we will be able to do things like that. Like for this year, it was a very small conference. But next year, we're going to put a cap at probably between 50 and 60 people in terms of the number of tickets that will be available, registrations that will be available. So it will be a select group that will be able to attend. We're hoping to be able to sell that out for next year. And if that works well, then the following year we'll grow it a little bit further. But we're not trying to turn this around and create a 1,000, 2,000 person conference out of this this event. What we want to do is we want to try to build the quality into the event. And similar to what we did with VWBPE, where we took that one step at a time, and each year we made appropriate changes to basically say, okay, here's what worked well, and here's the things that we could do better. Every single year in VWBPE, we've done something better than what we've done in the previous year. And this year is going to be no difference. And the call for proposal is going to be a huge indication of that when people, pull it up and go through it.
I was wondering on that.
Rockcliffe conference is going to be the same.
Right. Well, moving on to the Rockcliffe conference, which is not going to be your edition, but something appropriate. Going back to VWBP, of course. Although is Rockcliffe, by the way, up to anything else that you want to get in before we round up on VWBP? I mean,
there's a couple of small things that are coming up. Well, not so small, right? So we're going to be presenting at the Nonprofit Commons this Friday. So that's going to be at, my apologies, I got no idea where my phone just went to, and I don't know why somebody's phoning me. Let me get rid of that. We're going to be presenting a little bit of a retrospective on VWBPE and Erudition and the future of conferences. That's going to be coming at the Nonprofit Commons this Friday. And then obviously we're sponsoring the Open Simulator Community Conference for this year. So our logos and such are up all there. So that's kind of cool. Plus we've got
and you are doing a presentation yourself.
I'm doing a presentation. I think I'm the last presentation on the Sunday. Somehow they squeezed us in there. So and we're going to be having a discussion as part of that particular presentation on libraries and literacy, and a lot of the information that's going to come out of that is in part based upon our experiences from Erudition as well. And where we sort of see the future of libraries and literacy, and where a lot of these things need to go with regards to virtualization and augmented reality. So those are a couple of the next big things that are sort of coming up. Then obviously VWBPE, but it's we're moving along. We're moving along, and hopefully we're going to get the. I think this next year we're going to be focusing on membership numbers, and we're going to be introducing a lot of new programs to Rockcliffe over this coming year. And we've got a number of people that have come forward and said that they're very interested in leading those particular efforts. So I think you're going to be seeing a lot more coming out from Rockcliffe as we go forward.
Wonderful. Well, let's just to finalize, as it were. In fact, I'll click back on the appropriate picture. Nice poster, very visible and everything. Where did the V revolutions come from, or VR evolutions? Actually, is it VR evolution or is it V revolution, or can it be both?
It is both. It depends upon your perspective, which is the reason why we selected that as the theme for this year.
Right, nice trick there. Nice trick indeed. Right. What excited? Yeah. So
yeah, we thought it was really cool.
There? Yeah, what's the inspiration there? Is the kind of theme of it, or
last year was last year sort of being the 10th anniversary, because this 2018 is the 11th year of this particular conference, and so last year we did a real sort of retrospective in terms of how we've sort of gotten to this particular point. At the same time, we knew that Sansar was going to go public, that High Fidelity is more and more coming into its own, that and it just so happens that Second Life is, subsequently, they didn't at the time, but they have subsequently come out and said that they're going to be investing a lot more money inside Second Life in terms of that particular platform. In addition to that, there are so many different things that are coming out which are making more and more use of virtual reality and augmented reality. I think, and I had been predicting this for a while, that the period of time between 2018 and 2020 would be a real turning point for these particular types of environments and how we use virtual reality. I hadn't specified anything on augmented reality. I'm not going to claim any divine wisdom with regards to that one, but these particular environments especially, right? And while I think we're still sort of missing the boat a little bit, I was hoping that we would be further into this than we are, globally. That is, not Rockcliffe. I mean, from a global perspective, I was hoping that we would be further along. I'm sort of got it inside my head that there might be a couple of other big technology changes that need to happen before we'll see a massive paradigm switch with regards to the way we're going on these things. Right now, a lot of the companies are really focused on this idea of the virtual market, not virtual market, but essentially the marketplace, right? Second Life is making money through the marketplace. Highly is making money through the marketplace. Sansar wants to earn money through the marketplace.
As does Sciencebase, it's all virtual goods, and that's the bottom line. Yeah.
Right, but that's not the underlying technology. That's the surface layer stuff. That's the bling. That's the stuff that makes things look pretty, but it's not solving the essential problem of are you overcoming the barrier of path of least resistance, and none of them are tackling that particular problem. So I while I was hoping that we would be at this point between 2018 and 2020 where we would be overcoming this particular barrier, I've now pushed that particular prediction out at least another 10 years. And there's two different. Yeah, well, primarily because there's two other different things that need to happen from a technology standpoint that I think are really causing a bit of a problem on this path of least resistance thing. So one is the nature of how fast our bandwidth is right at the moment, right? So yes, a lot of people, if you live in a big city, you're probably going to have access to high-speed internet. If you live in a rural area, you're lucky if you've still got a US Robotics 5600K modem. Oh. I mean, it's just, there's disparities like this that exist across the board. So part of the problem is we have to work on getting rid of these disparities. But the other problem, however, is that the types of applications that are coming along as we start to work with virtual reality, as we start to work with big data, as we start to work with distributed systems in the cloud, that even at the LTE technology, right? Even at those the speeds and what LTE allows you to do, it is still not fast enough in order to really do the types of intensive things that are going to make, especially inside a virtual reality construct, be able to share those particular types of experiences effectively. It's good enough for video, but it's not good enough for.
It says simply that, the internet is sold these days basically on download speeds, and they never really give you accurate reflections of upload response, of course. So, but it's a bit like, you were talking about so many things moving to the cloud earlier. In that sense, of course, it makes it worse too, because if you're on the cloud, you need to be connected, and if you're doing anything complicated, it needs to be a good connection.
You do, and I think the other thing that sort of needs to come along is, and I realize people look at me funny when I say this, but we're the first commercial quantum computing computer was put into service last year. Early 2017, I think it was. I remember reading the article. I can't remember the company, but but that's a stepping stone into being able to bring quantum computing down to the point where people can have it on their desktop.
Yeah, that would change everything. Yeah,
that would be a massive change, because
they are working on radio kind of systems that will hopefully match fiber optics, so that it's like long range Wi-Fi's and relays and stuff. That would actually work in rural areas, but I mean, it is down the line, but it's got to happen somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you go into a virtual environment, so I mean, right now, I mean, even James will admit this. I mean, one of the biggest things that it's when you're switching camera angles on us here, I can't see what's being streamed online, but if James bounces back and forth between various different pictures here.
I will tell you, one of the reasons we also love doing the shows from here, because we don't have a live audience, is that James will attest that we get rather remarkable frame rates.
Right. But I mean, but you still got to load the image. That's the thing, right? Yeah. So when you have those situations where all of a sudden you switch your camera angle into a scene, and half your furniture is missing because the viewer that you're working with is trying to optimize the view of what you've got here. Yeah. And so you're watching furniture pop in and out.
I can understand what you mean. I mean, in these days that's overcome. Yeah. I mean, especially if you register stuff into camera beforehand. So
right. If you've got the storage capacity, if you've got the bandwidth speed that you can download more of a scene, so that the resources are available to the viewer, so that you can see it when you decide to change the camera angle, that's going to improve the experience that people see. It also means that you can bring in higher resolution avatars. You can make them a little bit more realistic. You can include more scripting. You can include more animations. I mean, there's just so much more that you can do if you had the computing power. Two things. One, if you've got the bandwidth and the speed in order to download that particular type of stuff. And the second one is if you've got the computing power sitting on your desktop, right? Because somewhere, right? Whether it's in the cloud and it's pre-processed and it's sent to your computer, and your computer is just showing you the information, or whether or not the entire scene is being downloaded to your computer and the computer is processing it, one way or the other, these particular types of processing speeds are just simply not as available as everybody would like to think they are. And so by taking that next step, once we get into that next step of quantum computers, or whatever that next big leap is, I think that's going to be a huge game changer for virtual reality, because now it allows us to truly, or hopefully it will allow us to interact with these particular types of scenes in a more fluid manner. And that is you talk to Ebby, you talk to Peter Peter about what it is that they're trying to do with Sansar, right? And they're trying to make it a more visually stunning experience. They're trying to make it vivid and in terms of what it is that you're looking at, and that's incredible. And some of the sample sites that are up right at the moment, some of them are just spectacular in terms of what's up there. But
yeah, it's been a trade-off.
It is, but I mean,
I agree. Some of them are, and
when you're sitting there waiting for 10 minutes for the scene to download before you can get in there, it's we're talking about the path of least resistance.
That's not good.
It's like in Second Life, you go into a scene and you understand it's going to res while you're there. In Sansar, you have to wait for the scene to download, and if the scene decides to take 10 minutes, well, you've already gone off to someplace else.
Yeah.
Potentially. I mean, unless you really want to be in that particular scene. Second Life, they say on the web that you've got 5 seconds to capture somebody's interest before they'll move on to a different site. In Second Life, people will give up to about, I think the number is like 3 minutes before they get disinterested in a particular location and they decide to move on. And that's partially, because they're interested in the 3D environment. Who's got time to wait 10, 15 minutes for a Sansar scene to download?
Yeah, well, I had that, but usually I don't wait for 1 second,
Well, yeah, and to be fair, but to be fair, a lot of them download within 2 minutes, right? But it's you're not seeing it for that 2 minutes. You're not seeing anything. All you're seeing is this. Yeah, I'm downloading. Yeah. And you got to do it even if you go back to the scene over and over again, you got to wait 2 minutes over and over and over and over again. It's not the path of least resistance.
Yeah, when I first saw Sciencebase, I thought that was going to be a problem, but in fact, they've fixed it. I mean, the longest you ever wait to get to a new destination is 20, 30 seconds, and it's usually much faster. So
yeah, and see
it can be done.
Yeah, and see that's reasonable, right? I mean, if you're especially for a virtual reality type scene, I mean, if you're waiting less than a minute, I mean that's cool. That's fine. But if you're waiting 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes for a scene to download before you can get into it, just to discover that, okay, maybe this wasn't one of the better ones that I wanted to look at. I should be looking at something else. That's 10 minutes, which is a waste of your time. People just don't have hands for it.
It rather sounds like we should be grateful they haven't got the interactivity. Can you imagine going to a meeting and getting there 1 minute early and finding you're actually 11 minutes late by the time you get in the door?
Well,
don't have to imagine
it. Yeah. James, have we had any? Have you got? You've been amazingly quiet here. I'm sure a lot of this has interested you. Have you got any questions for fellow modes here, or indeed have any been in the channel?
No, nothing in the chat today. So kind of quiet there online in real time. But gosh, there's so many topics to try and pick up on. But no, nothing in particular. Nope.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. You're right. It's probably just a profusion of topics and you didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's have a final look at that picture on the screen, which will advertise the thing. Now, just to reiterate, it's I guess there's a standard website already up, isn't there? Is it updated for this year now?
Yeah, VWBPE is up. And if people, we've got we managed to snag a URL for doing short codes with. So so if people are interested in doing a call for proposal, it's vwb.pe/FTP. And
FTP or CFP?
No, CFP.
CFP. Okay, so that's
call for proposal.
HTTP, etc., and then it's VWB. Oh, and it's gone. Right, I'll go read it out just so we can make sure. I have to step in nearby chat again. Here we are. VWP dot bit.ly/CFP.
Yep, and that'll take you directly to the CFP.
Yeah.
And similar thing for sponsors. If anybody wants to sponsor the conference, because we run completely based on donations. Sure. So we're highly dependent upon sponsors. We really could use some help. It's vwb.pe/sponsor.
Right. Very easy, very easy. Basically, just remember the address, then / whatever you're going for.
Yeah,
that's a good theory. Yeah, so
or vwbpe.org, and then you can go through the menu system, right?
Yeah.
But those two links will take you directly to those particular pages.
Yeah. No, it's quite a good one. Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a bit getting used to the .pe bit, but I mean, it's all same letters and everything, so it works quite well, I think. Yeah.
Oh. Well, we've had arguments. Sorry, I mean, just a quick aside. We've had arguments back and forth in terms of using Bitly or Google or what have you, and we figured with this one that we own this domain, so
right.
we're the only ones that are using it. So if we put that out there as a short code, people can be assured that they're going to the right spot. It's not like getting a Bitly link where somebody says, yeah, click on this, and you've got no clue where the heck it's going to.
And you get 500 adverts on the way.
Yeah. So it's part of the reason. Yeah, when we noticed it was available, we said, okay, we're going to grab that.
Why not? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I get it when I'm doing my news and stuff. I'll suddenly see something in my stream that's not got a regular URL, and I think, where the hell's that going? And I'll investigate to refresh my memory, and then it takes me all around the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the same thing that we did with RUC Today, right? Is that we grabbed RUC Today, and not only is that our main blog link in terms of what's happening at Rockcliffe. Right. So like across all of our different websites and what have you, like that's a consolidation site where we put everything there. We're also using that for short links. So, if anybody sees something that says ruc.today / what have you, that's from us. That's guaranteed to be from Rockcliffe. Right. And so we're trying not to use Bitly links or any other short, contractors.
You can't really totally control it because people will repost links and they'll do it with an old shortener, and you never quite know what know which shortener they're using and where it goes to get to you.
They will, but I mean, there's been huge concerns over, at least what's been expressed back to us and what we've been hearing is that there's huge concerns in terms of people using shortcode links in order to scam people and to have reroute them to sites that are just dangerous for their computer to go to. And so we wanted to have a couple of shortcode links.
Personalized shortcodes, yes.
Yeah, that we could guarantee that if somebody said, look, if you see this as the shortcode, it is from Rockcliffe, right? Guaranteed, right? It's Absolutely. Not from anybody else. It's from Rockcliffe. And, we want to do that in order to make sure that, people are first of all, we want to get them to the right place as quickly as possible. And secondly of all, we want to make sure that they're, the communications are protected, right? So.
Sure. Okay, I'll just sort of a final thing that somebody I was talking to within the last week or so mentioned to me or something that they had been on a panel you held that they were filming. Oh, was it Caledonia? I can't remember. Somebody mentioned that you'd had this has escaped my radar, and I haven't seen it posted anywhere. But is this a new Rockcliffe TV kind of thing?
No, it's not a Rockcliffe TV type of thing. It was one of the things that came out of the conference was we wanted to do a conference on innovators and revolutions. Right. So we brought together an expert panel in order to discuss. So we had Lear Lobo, we had Cynthia. Oh shoot, I'm the worst person with names.
Hello, Cynthia
Yeah,
Cologne.
we had Cynthia Cologne. We had Marie Advent. We had Gentle Huron from Virtuality, not Abilities, and we had Blue Barker Lobo. And so, a variety of different backgrounds, right? Because everybody came from a different place. And we were going through and we were talking about the idea of innovators, what represents an innovator in their particular industry, and what represents a revolution or revolutionary activities. And so right at the moment, Letty's going through and she's doing an analysis on the transcript, and we're going to be making information on that available a little bit later. So it's really interesting though, because we're seeing a lot of both as part of the conversation and afterwards, in terms of the back channel, right? Because essentially we're going through and we're looking at both. We're looking at the conversation and we're looking at the back channel. And there's some really interesting concepts that came out of that particular panel. So we're hoping to present some of that this Friday at the Nonprofit Commons. And there'll probably be a follow-up paper on that we're going to either put into the Journal of Virtual Studies or publish somewhere with regards to some of the ideas, the concepts, where potentially it would be going, and the what's the word that I'm looking for here? I'm stumbling over words. I shouldn't be doing this.
Well, we've been on for a while.
Future, we have, but the innovation that sort of comes about as a result of these particular types of things. So it's also given us some ideas with regards to the Quadrividium topics for the Virtual Worlds Conference that's coming up this year via Revolutions. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool things that we got out of that, and I just can't thank Marie and Caledonia and Lear and Gentle and Blue Barker enough for agreeing to come and do it. It was a phenomenal opportunity to have that conversation.
It's funny, it was Caledonia who told me about it, and I thought, I wish I'd been there, because actually, if it was Leah, she's the first one to normally ping me, hey, I'm doing this. But she must have missed that one.
Yeah, we sort of caught her between gigs, because she had like literally an hour, and then she had to go to another virtual conference, like literally at the end of the hour. So
this is Leah.
Yeah, this is Lear. This is if she's not doing 20,000 things at once, she's not.
She's not herself.
She's not herself. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. But no, it was good, and I learned a lot of things out of it myself, and hopefully we're going to be able to get a chance to process the video soon and then throw it up on YouTube. So.
Oh, that's where I'll finally get to watch it, probably.
Yeah.
But no, it'd be interesting to read the paper that comes out of it too. Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, you're your own worst enemy. You kept talking.
I know. I was supposed to be out of here in 90 minutes and 3 hours, and it's now dark outside. So now I gotta.
You are the one who said it. I was trying.
Yeah, I know.
But I think we better wrap it now before we do any more damage to your your body cycle for day and night. There's nothing else. So it's wonderful having you here.
Thank you.
Lot of talking there. You got some massive topics actually, and I think in the back of my head I had 1,000 more to move on to, but we're not getting to it now.
I'm around. I can be back.
Yeah, you have to wait for another. Well, we'll reconvene next week. Not
next week. Sorry.
I think we'll give you a little break. But
right.
wonderful to have you here. Thanks for coming, and
thank you.
Yeah, see you soon. And my thanks also, of course, to James Atloud here, multitasking on the cameras, and the old question popped in there.
Yeah, it was.
So thank you.
Oh, you're certainly welcome. And I like the question about changing camera angles. I tried to demonstrate that a little bit, but things are rezzing pretty fast here. So I went really wide and really close.
Yeah.
A little bit of a jump.
I don't know what it is.
Why,
I mean,
why can't the technology fail when you need it to fail?
That's
oh my
right.
God.
That's right.
I think a lot of it has to do that this is a deserted grid. I mean, it is colossal. It's 25 standard regions, but it's all one region. And there's enough. Well, the print count's not that high, but you'd think, my immediate thought here was that this is going to be a nightmare. I'm just going to use it for fiddling by myself, kind of thing. But as it happened, the moment James came in, he was getting frame rates that knocked the off all the other places we film. So so it's I think it's some of it's bandwidth, some of it's dedication, and that's a whole load of issues. But we did quite well on that. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, James. So with that, I'm going to round off the show. God wish everybody a very good morning, very good afternoon, very good evening, and a very good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you see. That's the bit you are. We'll be back next week, I hope. So we'll see you then. Bye for now.